The disappearance of Brian Shaffer, the man who vanished from a bar, April 1st, 2006. A 27-year-old medical student walks into a bar with his friends to celebrate spring break. Security cameras catch him entering through the front door at 1:15 a.m. But here's what makes this case absolutely baffling. Those same cameras never show him leaving. Not through the front door, not through the back, not through any exit. He simply vanished into thin air. And 18 years later, no one knows what happened to Brian Shaffer. Brian Shaffer had everything going for him. He was a second-year medical student at Ohio State University, engaged to his girlfriend, Alexis, and just weeks away from a romantic vacation to Miami with her smart, popular, beloved by everyone who knew him. The kind of guy who had a bright future ahead. But the spring of 2006 had been rough for Brian. Just 2 weeks before his disappearance, his mother had died suddenly from a rare bone marrow disorder. Brian was devastated. He'd been extremely close to her, and her death hit him hard. On March 31st, 2006, the night before his disappearance, Brian decided to blow off some steam. It was the start of spring break. His friend William Clint Florence suggested they go bar hopping in Columbus's Arena District. Brian agreed. He needed a distraction. They started the night at several bars, drinking and trying to have a good time. Around 1:15 a.m. on April 1st, they arrived at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar located on the second floor of a building near campus. Security cameras captured Brian entering the bar. He's wearing a white polo shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap worn backwards. He looks relaxed, slightly drunk, talking with his friends. The bar was packed that night. It was spring break, and college students filled every corner of the place. Brian spent the next hour and a half drinking, chatting up some women at the bar, and hanging out with Clint. At 1:55 a.m., security footage shows Brian talking to two young women near the bar entrance. He's animated, friendly, clearly having a conversation. The women eventually walk away, and that's the last time anyone ever saw Brian Shaffer. At 2 a.m., Clint decided to leave. He looked around for Brian but couldn't find him in the crowded bar. He assumed Brian had already left or was talking to someone Clint went home. But Brian never came home. When Brian didn't show up for work on Monday, his girlfriend Alexis knew something was wrong. Brian was responsible. He wouldn't just disappear without telling anyone. She called his father, Randy, who immediately went to Brian's apartment. His car was there. His phone was there. But Brian, gone. Randy reported him missing, and police began investigating immediately. Here's where the case becomes absolutely bizarre. Police pulled all the security footage from the Ugly Tuna Saloona. The bar was on the second floor of a building, and there were only two ways out: the front entrance, which had security cameras, and a back service exit that led to a construction area, which also had cameras covering it. Police reviewed every single frame of footage from that night. They watched hundreds of people enter and leave the bar. Brian Shaffer was never seen leaving. The front entrance? No sign of him. The back exit? Not there either. It's as if he vanished into thin air inside a crowded bar. Police searched the entire building. They checked every room, every closet, every possible hiding spot. They even brought in cadaver dogs. Nothing. They searched the construction area behind the building. Maybe he'd gone out the back, fallen, and gotten hurt. Nothing. They drained a nearby pond. Nothing. Investigators interviewed everyone who was at the bar that night. Hundreds of witnesses. Several people remembered seeing Brian, but no one saw him leave. One woman said she'd been talking to him earlier in the night, and he seemed fine, a little drunk, but happy. Clint, Brian's friend, was interviewed multiple times. His story never changed. He looked for Brian, couldn't find him, and assumed he'd already left. Clint took a polygraph test and passed. But here's something strange. Clint refused to be interviewed by private investigators hired by Brian's family. He hired a lawyer and stopped cooperating beyond his initial police statements. To this day, he's never spoken publicly about that night. Then there's Alexis, Brian's girlfriend. She was devastated by his disappearance. But investigators noticed something odd. About a week after Brian vanished, Alexis moved on. She started dating someone new, almost immediately, and eventually moved away. She's since changed her name and refuses to speak about Brian. And then there's the even stranger detail. 2 years after Brian's disappearance, Alexis called Brian's father, Randy, to tell him she'd had a dream. In the dream, Brian was alive and well, living somewhere else, and he was okay. Why would she call with that? What did she know, or think she knew? In 2008, 2 years after the disappearance, a private investigator claimed they'd tracked Brian's phone being turned on and used briefly in an area near Hilliard, Ohio, about 14 miles from Columbus. The phone pinged a cell tower, then went dead again. Was Brian alive? Was someone using his phone? Or was it a technical error? Police investigated but found nothing conclusive. So what happened to Brian Shaffer? For nearly 2 decades, investigators, amateur sleuths, and Brian's family have tried to piece together the answer. Here are the main theories. Theory 1. He left through an unseen exit. Some investigators believe Brian found a way out that wasn't captured on camera. Maybe there was a blind spot. Maybe he went through a restricted area, a window, a service corridor, something that wasn't monitored. From there, he could have been disoriented from drinking, wandered off, and met with foul play or an accident. Maybe he fell into a construction pit and his body was later covered by concrete when the building was finished. This theory explains why he wasn't seen leaving, but it doesn't explain why no trace of him has ever been found. Theory 2. Foul play inside the bar. What if something happened to Brian inside the Ugly Tuna? What if he got into an argument, a fight, or encountered someone dangerous? The bar was crowded. Someone could have lured him to a back area, attacked him, and hidden his body somewhere in the building, maybe in a wall, a ventilation shaft, or a sealed-off area. But cadaver dogs searched the building and found nothing, and the building has been renovated since. If his body were there, wouldn't someone have found it by now? Theory 3. He started a new life. This is the theory Brian's family struggles with the most. What if Brian, devastated by his mother's death, overwhelmed by the pressure of medical school, decided to just walk away? What if he left through an exit that wasn't monitored, got rid of his phone, and started over somewhere else? The phone ping in 2008 supports this theory. Maybe he turned his phone on briefly to check something, then shut it off again. But would Brian really do that? Would he leave his father, his girlfriend, his entire life behind without a word? Most people who knew him say absolutely not. Brian was close to his family. He loved his father. He had plans for the future, and yet, people snap. Grief does strange things. Theory 4. Clint knows more. Some people believe Brian's friend Clint knows more than he's saying. Why did he hire a lawyer? Why did he refuse to cooperate with private investigators? Maybe there was an argument that night. Maybe something happened between them. Maybe Clint saw something he's too afraid to admit. But Clint passed a polygraph, and police have never named him as a suspect. If he knows something, he's kept it secret for 18 years. The truth is, every theory has holes. None of them fully explains how a man can walk into a bar and never be seen again. Brian Shaffer's father, Randy, spent years searching for his son. He never gave up hope. He put up billboards, hired private investigators, did media interviews. He kept Brian's phone active for years, hoping his son would call. In 2008, Randy suffered a fall and became partially paralyzed. Even from his wheelchair, he continued searching. Randy passed away in 2023, never knowing what happened to his son. Today, Brian Shaffer's case remains one of the most baffling disappearances in modern history. A man walked into a bar in front of security cameras and was never seen again. No body, no credible sightings, no solid leads. Just questions that have haunted investigators for nearly 2 decades. If Brian is out there somewhere, living under a new identity, he's now 45 years old. He'd have a whole new life, new friends, maybe a new family. Does he ever think about the people he left behind? Does he know his father died still looking for him? Or is the answer darker? Was Brian the victim of a crime that was perfectly covered up? Is his body somewhere in Columbus, waiting to be found? The security footage doesn't lie. Brian Shaffer walked into the Ugly Tuna Saloona on April 1st, 2006. But he never walked out. If you have any information about Brian Shaffer's disappearance, please contact Columbus Police. Even the smallest detail could finally bring answers to a case that's haunted a family and a city for nearly 20 years. If this case got under your skin like it did mine, hit that subscribe button. We're unlocking the vault on Unsolved Mysteries every single week. And drop a comment. What do you think happened to Brian Shaffer? Stay curious, stay safe. And remember, sometimes the most terrifying mysteries happen in the most ordinary places.